This is the first in a series, What Do We Believe About the Sacraments? As Catholics, we believe in the sacraments, but I thought we might ask ourselves, what do we believe about the sacraments? And so this series is going to look at the seven sacraments. We're going to explore what is behind the actual celebration, what is behind the words, what is behind the gestures of each of those sacraments. We call them celebrations or ceremonies or rituals. What's underneath for us as participants in the celebration of the sacraments? But before we get to each of the sacraments, and I want to explore them more or less in a kind of order. But before we do that, what about the sacraments themselves, sort of taken together? What do we believe about all of them? First of all, think of your experience of a sacrament, any one of them. Some of those experiences, some of those memories of those experiences were probably very memorable. Perhaps you remember your first communion, your first full participation in the sacrament of Eucharist. Perhaps you remember your wedding. If you are married, I suspect you remember that. I remember my ordination. Not completely. It's been a few years ago. Perhaps you remember being anointed if you were ill, or you remember being present when someone else was celebrating the sacrament of anointing of the sick. So many other experiences, memories of celebrating the sacraments. So my question is, what did we believe was taking place in that moment, that ceremony? Did we reflect on a deeper truth than what we felt, what we saw, what we touched, what we heard? So this is what Catholics believe about the sacraments. A few point form kind of statements. First of all, it is the action of God in our life. We believe that through the sacraments, God intervenes in our human experience in a very particular way. It is the action of God. It's mysterious, yes, but it's real and it's intended. In other words, God intends to enter and interact with our life. The grace of God's intention, we believe, comes to us through Jesus Christ. The Greeks had a word, mysterion, which eventually got attached, applied to our later understanding of sacraments. The Latin word, sacramentum, meant a promise. One took a sacrament like one would take a vow, a promise. Mysterion meant the intervention of God in a miraculous, marvelous, mysterious way. So if we put the two together, we have a pretty good understanding of our notion of sacrament. That the sacrament is the promise, the pledge of God to intervene in our lives through acts of salvation, acts of mercy, acts of forgiveness, acts of providence, acts of care, acts of love. So God promises to enter into our life, and we as the church celebrate those interventions, if you like, those interactions, that divine human friendship that unfolds in those moments that we surround with gestures and words, maybe music, silence, and we make up what we call the celebration of the sacrament. You could say that that sacraments are what we do because of what God has done and what God continues to do through the risen Christ. So sacraments are not nouns, sacraments are verbs. Sacraments happen, not just in a brief and often memorable ritual, but in life. And so sacraments shape our life and our experience of life. We believe that sacraments help us to be who we are and who we need to become in the name of the risen Christ. And so we will explore each of the sacraments with these thoughts in mind. And maybe, I hope, you will discover some new and richer appreciation